We are almost live or live now. Hello, people. I can see your messages. Yes. Okay. I'm sure we are live now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today with the amazing Jeff Gothelf. I'm so excited for today's session because I'm sure that there is so much learnings that we're gonna all have. Quick introductions. I'm Ala, your favorite moderator. I am working in airfocus as a junior marketing manager, and I'm responsible for all these events. So if this is the first time for you joining in, you will hear my name, like see my name here and there. And we have Jeff Gothelf here. It's an honor to host you. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. My name is Jeff Gotthelf. These days, I work as a coach, consultant, and trainer and public speaker for primarily large and mid-sized organization on the topics of product management, product discovery, agility, lean UX, and OKRs. Throughout my career, I've worked as a designer, a UX designer, an information architect, a product manager, a team leader, an entrepreneur. I've written a few books, and I'm writing a book right now about objectives and key results as well, which I'm really excited about. It's called Who Does What by How Much, which is a theme that you're going to hear again and again and again and again in my presentation today. And then that's not by accident per se.
I had an eyes on the content. It looks amazing. So I'll just like do a little introduction of the tool for our audience. And I got two poll questions prepared for you. Then we're gonna jump in the presentation. I don't want to lose any time today. So first, some of you already accessed the public chat. Please drop where you're from and who are you, so that we could get to know. And don't be shy. Drop your LinkedIn too, so we can just expand our network together. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please drop your questions there. My colleague Nuran in the background, she will just react to your messages. And after the presentation, we're going to answer your questions live. And if you're all ready, let's get going with the first poll. Okay. So here is our first poll. What aspect of using OKRs interests you the most? Setting clear and measurable goals, enhancing team alignment and focus, driving customer-centric decision making, improving product success metrics. Do you have a guess, Jeff?
I know what I'd like it to be. I think, well, you know the topic of this conversation as much as I do. I would like it to be a bigger focus on the customer, but it's hard to separate these two things. You know, setting clear and measurable goals is equally important, but if you set them accurately, which is going to be part of my conversation, then you're driving customer-centric decision making. So separating those two things out is, you know, it's a little unfair for the people taking the poll, but both good answers.
We have like 50 votes, and if you have all voted, I will just stop the vote. And so the result is setting clear and measurable goals. That would be also my answer. That's why also I'm super excited and keen to learn from you today. And the second question coming and going on a stream. Before today's webinar, how would you rate your understanding of how OKRs can drive customer-centric product development? Nice. I'm happy to see no high, because that means you're in the right place.
Yeah, this is good. That means you're the perfect target audience for this conversation today. That's good.
Yes. Okay, let's give a couple more seconds until maybe 50 votes. We're on now 40. But I don't think the answer will change. We see like 64% here. So I will stop the poll now. And I'm welcoming you again. You're in the right place to learn today, and I will just leave the stage to you, Jeff.
Excellent. Thanks, Ala. Hey, folks. Like I said, I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm going to talk for 35 minutes, roughly, I think, and have this conversation about objectives and key results. You'll notice the name of the book, Who Does What by How Much. You'll notice the subtitle of the talk, Who Does What by How Much. And I'll give away a bit of the punchline right now. That question is the key to setting proper objectives and key results. And it's the key to making customer-centric decisions. And we're going to go through this conversation, and you'll see what I mean, hopefully, in the next half hour or so. And then we'll have some time for questions after the fact. Let's start here. This is February 22nd, 2020. So 4 years ago, almost to the day. A week from today would be 4 years since this happened. That's me, as you can see. Those are my daughters. They were so little back then. Now they're big. One of them doesn't even live at home anymore. So sad. We went to a Barca game. That's the stadium. That's a picture that I took from where I was sitting, both the selfie and sort of an outward-facing photo as well. If you've ever been to Camp Nou to see a Barca game, and Camp Nou sadly has been torn down to be rebuilt, but if you've ever went to a Barca game at Camp Nou, you'll know that it's 100,000 people are held in that stadium, and you sit there like this. Part of the reason that they're tearing it down is to make better seats, but you sat there like this. We sat there like that with 100,000 people shouting at the top of our lungs. Everything was awesome. Look, I was wearing a short sleeve shirt in February, right? Isn't that amazing? And we were having the best time. My family was in town visiting. We had plans. Nothing was going to stop us. I had work the week after, work the next month, work the month after that, adventures planned. And then 1 month later, literally 1 month later, this was our life, right? Like literally March 14th, March 15th, 2020, this was our life. Zoom calls just to see them, wishing my parents a happy wedding anniversary through a phone interface, because we got locked down. COVID came, lockdowns came. None of us knew what was happening. It felt like the world was ending. And all of a sudden, all those plans, all that direction, all that excitement, all those ideas that we had, everything was out the window, right? And it really brought home a key element that I think we take for granted, or maybe we don't actively think about it, but we are constantly guessing about the best next course of action. Why? Because we can't predict the future, right? Sadly, right? We can only make the best guesses based on what we know right now. And this is an uncomfortable truth of life. You can't predict the future, so I'm going to make some plans based on what I know today. But the reality is those plans may be completely wrong or false based on what happens in the future. Now, that's true in life. It's true in work as well, right? We make the same kind of predictions, the same kind of guesses about what to build, how to build it, who to build it for, and what we believe those people will do with that stuff that we make for them. And then we kind of hope that that's what's going to happen, because that's the best guess that we can make based on the data that we have today. And so, the trick is to figure out if our guesses are correct, and to figure that out as soon as possible, because if they're incorrect, we need to do something else. Now, it used to take a really long time to find out if our guesses were right or wrong. This is where I started my career. So I worked on the software that went on these CDs from America Online. And if you were lucky enough to live in the United States, France, Germany, or the UK, you were lucky enough to receive one of these CDs from us when I worked there. We made a lot of these CDs. And back then, because software came in a box, it took us months and sometimes years to find out if we were right about the guesses that we made when we built our software, or if we were wrong, right? Did we choose the right features? Did we design them well? Did we solve a real problem, a real need for real customers in a meaningful way? And, we would build the software, we'd print 15 million copies of these CDs, we'd ship it, and then we'd kind of hope for the best and see what happens. Today, there's good news, right? The time to learn if your guess was right or wrong has shortened dramatically. Today, you can learn whether you're right or wrong literally as fast as you want to find out. And your company is willing to invest, right? How much money is your company willing to invest to learn whether it's right or wrong? This is a graphic from a book called The Phoenix Project, which is a great book by Gene Kim. And it talks about how frequently the big tech companies deploy software. Amazon deploys 23,000 times a day. Google, 5,500 times a day. Netflix, 500 times a day, right? Each one of those deployments is an opportunity to learn whether our guess is right or wrong, because we're putting something into the world, and then we're seeing what people do with the thing that we put out there. And so the faster that we can put ideas into the world, the faster that we can learn whether or not we made the right guesses. And what's amazing is we have all kinds of tools and practices and methods and ways of working to help us reduce the risk of guessing incorrectly and wasting effort, right? Every time that we make an incorrect guess, we're wasting time. We don't know that at the time, but we have all of these tools, Agile and design thinking and lean thinking and the product model and empowered teams and DevOps and lean UX and all these ideas that are designed to help us reduce the risk of making the wrong guesses about what we should build, who we should build it for, how we should build it. And yet, despite the technology infrastructure that allows us to ship ideas into the hands of our customers as fast as we want, and despite decades of agile and design thinking and lean startup and product thinking and all that kind of stuff, there is one practice that slows down our success and one practice that continuously gets in the way of us being successful with our guesses. And that practice is managing to outputs. Managing to outputs happens at every company, certainly every client that I work with, and it is the biggest obstacle to building a customer-centric practice that takes advantage of this new technology and these new tools to reduce the risk of guessing incorrectly. Managing to output usually comes in this form, right? Make me a thing, build me something. And usually it's prescriptive, right? Make me a traffic light, make sure it has a red light and a green light and it works on this cycle. And somebody will say, okay, I built the traffic light. But the reality is that we're actually trying to solve a problem, right? What we're trying to understand is why something's happening. What's the context of it? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And if we're trying to solve a specific need, right, there are a variety of ways for us to solve that, right? There is no guarantee that the output, the thing that we're making, is actually going to change the behavior of the people that we give that thing to. That's the difference between output and outcome. Output is the thing that we make. Outcome is the behavior change we see in our target audience after we make the thing. And what's interesting is that so many organizations manage to output. They prescribe what to make, what it should look like, what it should do, and they think that they know how the target audience is going to react to it. Right? They're taking a guess. They're making a series of assumptions, and those assumptions are risky. Now, look, there are situations where managing to outputs makes sense. There's absolutely situations, and those situations tend to be when we know exactly what the end product is going to look like, and we know exactly what people are going to do with it when we're done, right? So we know what goes into it. We know what it's going to look like when it's done. We know what 98% of the people are going to do with it when we give it to them. And so we've got a high certainty and a low risk, right? And in those situations of high certainty and low risk, managing to output makes a ton of sense. We have a very good, there's very good sense of what this is going to look like and what people are going to do with it. Bridges, statues, towers, buildings, etc. Right? Television sets. But when it comes to sort of everything else, and particularly digital products and services, the future that we build into is unpredictable, right? And if we continue to kind of target these outputs, we reduce our ability to react to new developments in the world. Pandemics, competitive threats, new products, AI, right? All the things that we didn't have a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. And the agility of our organizations, our ability to react, is dramatically reduced if we're managing to output. We're building if we're building a specific thing in a very specific way, rather than thinking about what is the need for the customers that we're serving. And so instead, we need to work from the things that we do know right now. And there are at least 4 things that we know right now. The first is we know what people need to do in the systems that we're building. We have a sense of what we're trying to do. We know, hopefully, what they are actually doing in the system. So we built it to do X. We see what they're doing today. If we're lucky, we also know why they're behaving in that way today, because we're talking to them and they're telling us. And then lastly, we know what we need to be successful as a business, right? If we can achieve these results, then we succeed as a business. These are the things that we can start to base our assumptions on, because these are the things that we know today. We can start to base our guesses on these things. The thing that we definitely don't know is what exactly is going to help us meet our users' needs, our users' goals, right? Trying to predict what products or features or solutions make sense now, right, which is what managing the output is, runs the risk of being wrong in the future by the time we get to build it. This is risky work. It's filled with untested assumptions that we believe are going to drive some user behavior, but we currently don't have any proof for that. And so instead of setting goals as output, go make me and build me a thing, we need to set human-centric goals, customer-centric goals. And that's where OKRs come in. Now, very, very quickly, objectives and key results, it's a team-based goal-setting framework that defines a qualitative goal. Why are we doing this together? And then measures success towards that goal by achieving specific outcomes. What are people doing differently now that we've done some things out there, right? Rather than measuring the completion of tasks or the production of work as success, right? It's a fundamentally different approach to thinking about it. And we'll go through why that is in a minute here. At the heart of using OKRs to build a customer-centric perspective is believing that you have a customer. Now, that may sound weird, if you work in a B2C environment where you directly deal with the end consumer, right? If you deal with the end consumer, you know who your customer is, right? But if you build products that are for third-party vendors, right, those may be your customers. If you work in a B2B situation, your customers are the humans who buy and use the products inside your target companies. Maybe you build a product or a service or an API or a security system or whatever it is for internal colleagues, right? The idea is that everyone who goes to work every day and makes a thing has a customer, a human, that consumes that thing, right? And it doesn't matter if you actually make product or you work in finance or in legal or in risk. The things that you make, someone else consumes. And if you start to think about those folks as your customer, it changes how we consider our work. It gets us to think about, well, what will people do? What behaviors do I want to see in those folks once I give them my output, the thing that I make, right? What will people be doing differently when I build or deliver something better to them? And so we're targeting human behavior as our change. The problem with human behavior is this. Humans do weird stuff. Humans are complex and humans are unpredictable. And just because we think we know what they're going to do, or even if we have a sense of what they're going to do, we have no idea if we're actually right, because people do strange things, all kinds of weird things. Here's another example of people just doing things that you wouldn't expect them to do. And yet, right, we're trying to build products that figure out exactly how people are going to behave. And what's funny about that too, is that even if we do figure it out, even if we do say, wow, we know exactly what people are actually going to be doing with this product, that behavior isn't static. It changes over time, right? We built a website for people to connect with each other. You built a social network in the hopes that people will connect with each other and remember these memories and connect with their family and friends. And it turns out that we're spreading hate online and we are subverting elections, right? Like these are behaviors that we never expected these tools to actually deliver. And that's the thing about humans. Humans are complex and unpredictable. So even if we start to target behavior, we have to keep a constant eye on this. And so as we think about setting customer-centric goals, we ask the question, right? Who does what by how much? This idea that if I have a customer and I deliver value to that customer, right, what will they be doing differently? And the measure of what they will be doing differently is this idea of outcomes. Outcomes are measurable changes in human behavior that drive business results. And again, I know I told you I'd be driving this home a lot, but all those components are part of this definition, right? When we think about setting proper objectives and key results, and we start to focus on outcomes, we always want to answer this question: who is the human that we're targeting? What behavior, what are they doing that we'd like to change or improve or reduce? And by how much, right? How do we know that this is done, right? Who does what by how much? And that's the amazing thing about outcomes. Outcomes tell us when we've delivered customer value, when we see people behaving differently, right? In a positive way for them and in a positive way for the business, we know that we've delivered outcomes. We've delivered value, sorry. The other thing that outcomes tell us is when we're done. The interesting thing and the challenging thing about managing the outcomes is that we are trying to change behavior by a certain amount, a 50% increase in retention, a 25% increase in average order value, a 90% reduction in homepage bounce rate, right? Something like that. We could work on those problems forever. We could ship software forever. Remember, Amazon is deploying 23,000 times a day. We are continuously updating these systems that we're working on, right? And we could do that forever. When are we done? We're done when we've changed behavior enough. And so we're going to bring all these pieces together and we're going to combine them in this idea behind OKRs, right? Let's start with objectives, okay? The first half of OKRs. Objectives are our goals. They are qualitative. So you're going to hear a lot of superlatives like the best, the easiest, the simplest, the most efficient, the most compelling, right? Those are the kinds of things we want to hear in our objectives. They should be inspirational and aspirational. This is the reason we get out of bed every day. They should be action-oriented and show clear value. And then ultimately, they should be time-bound. Let me ask you a question. Since I see you're active in the chat, let me ask you a quick question. There are two things that are explicitly missing from this list when it comes to setting goals. What's missing? What are the two things, big things that are missing from this list of what makes up a good objective? Can you add a couple thoughts in the chat? I'll give you a second. We're setting goals. What's not here in this list? Yes, there are no measures in this list. Very good. There's no metrics in the objectives. Exactly. Okay. Very good. Right? What's the other thing that's missing? Right? So no metrics. That's correct. There's one other thing that's missing here as well. see you all listing off the SMART goal attributes. I appreciate that. But there's something a bit more fundamental. So no metrics here. So measurability is not in the objective. Correct. Time bound is the last item in the list, actually. It's right there. The other thing that's missing from here is features, right? There's no features, right? There's nothing in here that tells us what to build, right? The only thing that says is we are going to do something in a compelling way, in a most successful way. We don't know how we're going to measure it, and we don't know what we're going to make in order to achieve the qualitative goal, right? So metrics and features do not exist in our objectives. Now, the way that we get to a good objective statement is we start with the problem that we're trying to solve, right? We don't start with a solution. We start with the problem that we're trying to solve. And we want to consider the most important business problem that our team is tackling in the next cycle, the next quarter or two. What are you trying to solve for? What's the problem? Why is it a problem, right? And what do you know about the root cause of the issue? That's a great place to start. So here's an example business problem, okay? We run a continuing education learning platform for lawyers. We've noticed that customers sign up for our service, take only one course, and leave. And when they leave, they say that's a user experience. That's the main issue. And this drives up our acquisition and sales costs and reduces profit. Okay, that's the problem that I'm dealing with in the next quarter. So we start with the problem. Okay, the next thing that we ask is, if we solve the problem, what does that look like? Notice the wording, because the wording is really important here. I didn't ask, how will you solve the problem? I said, if you solve the problem and turn that into a positive statement, what does that look like? Well, it could look like this: build an engaging continuing education product for the entirety of a lawyer's career by the end of the year. And what we've done here is we've written our first objective statement. If we go back to my list of attributes, it's qualitative, right? Engaging, build an engaging product. It's inspirational and aspirational. We want to be there for the entirety of a lawyer's career. This is why we get out of bed. It's action-oriented and provides clear value. We're going to build this learning, this education bit for lawyers, and we want to get this done by the end of the year. That's our time box. Nowhere in here does it say what we're building, nor how we're going to measure this. But what we've done is we've taken the problem statement, turned it into a positive statement, and now we have our objective. Now, what's interesting is that as we write OKRs, we need to set the level for them correctly. In other words, we want to set goals that your team can achieve. So if you are in charge of a whole product or a business unit, the goals of that product or that business unit can certainly be your objective. But if you're in charge of only one slice of that customer journey, then your objective should reflect goals for that part only. So for example, if you only work on the search part of the workflow or the authentication part of the workflow, or the checkout part of the workflow, you're going to set objectives and key results just for that part of the world that you can control and that you can influence. If you sign up for goals that are above that, you don't have influence over that, and you're setting yourself up for failure. Okay, we want to set objectives at the level that we can influence. Once we've got our objectives, we want to set good key results, right? Key results are the metrics, right? So before we said, hey, metrics are missing, key results are our measurable milestones. They're quantifiable. These are metrics. Let's be super clear. They should be ratios or rates, ideally, because that tells us how we're trending, 50% more, 25% less, right? They can be absolute numbers if you don't have a baseline, but ideally, we're going for ratios or rates. They should be aggressive. They should be goals that we're not hitting 100% of the goal every quarter. We should be able to verify our key results with evidence, analytics, reporting, market research, customer research. And most importantly, and the thing that makes this different and the thing that makes this difficult is that your key results must be outcomes. They must be measurable changes in human behavior that deliver business results, right? Human behavior must be your key result. This is where this gets interesting. And this is where this kind of all this conversation kind of starts to tie together, because this is how we change the way that we set goals and we start to build customer-centric decisions. Let me ask you the question one more time. What's missing here? What's not on this list again? I'll give you a hint. It was missing from the last list as well. Solutions. Thank you very much. All right, good. That was an easy one. Yes, exactly. No features here either. So you'll notice neither in your objective nor in your key results are we talking about how we're going to solve the problem, because those are going to be our guesses. Instead, our measure of success, our goal is going to be, how did we impact the behavior of the people that we serve? How did we impact customer behavior, right? That's going to be our OKRs. And to do that, we have to start by defining our target audience. Whose behavior do we want to change? And that is for you to think about, well, who consumes what you make? Current customers, prospective customers, users of our product, colleagues in other departments, third-party vendors, leadership teams, designers, etc. Right? Who uses the thing that we make, right? And then once we've identified that, then we ask the key question. What will those people be doing differently if we achieve the objective? In other words, how will their behavior change? And the answer to this question is your key result. So in this particular case, right, 50% decrease in the number of existing customers leaving the service due to its user experience. And once again, just to beat this to death, right, here's that question again. Who does what by how much? To know if you've written a good key result, you should be able to answer that question every single time. Who does what by how much? Very, very, very important. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is because there aren't any products or features or solutions or any kind of output in our objective nor in our key results, it's the product that becomes the variable. And I think this is a fairly radical concept. It's rare that the product is the variable in our conversations at work. In most situations, certainly in my career, the product has never been the variable. The variables have been scope and deadlines and design choices, but we've never asked, will we ship this? Should we ship this? When we use outcomes as key results, we have to go figure out, we have to go discover what combination of code, copy, and design delivers the behavior change that we're looking for. And there's an infinite number of choices that you can make to impact that behavior in a positive way. And so the variable in our work becomes, well, what are we building? Is this the right thing to build? Is this the right thing to build? Is that the right thing to build? And then even if we figure out what to build, how will we implement it, right? Becomes a constant process of shipping, sensing, and responding, building, measuring, learning, testing and learning, and continuously improving our choices based on the impact that we are having on our target audience, right? And so if we put together a compelling set of OKRs, right? I'm going to skip this one because we didn't do this one, but we want to build an engaging continuing education product for the entirety of a lawyer's career by the end of the year. How do we know? We know because each user will take at least 3 courses every year. That's a 300% increase over where we are today. 25% of new customers will come from word of mouth referrals, and every law firm that signs up registers at least 50% of its staff. Those are the behaviors that we believe tell us that we've built an engaging continuing education product for the entirety of a lawyer's career, right? Those are our best guesses based on what we know today. This is an example of a well-written objective and key result statement that focuses on customer behavior as the success. Let me show you another one from the real world. This is the Cleveland Clinic. It is an international healthcare organization based, perhaps not surprisingly, in Cleveland, Ohio, in the United States. They use OKRs. They publish their OKRs publicly every year. There's a couple here that I really like. This first one, their objective is to be the best place to receive care anywhere. Qualitative, inspirational, aspirational, time-bound, right, by the end of the year. How do we know? Well, we're going to reduce the absolute number of serious safety events, and we're also going to reduce the ratio or the rate of serious safety events. That's the behavior change that we want to see with our staff, right? That tell us that we were the best place to receive care anywhere. The other one I really like is this one, because this one is internally facing to the staff themselves and as a place to work. Best place to work in healthcare. Aspirational, inspirational, qualitative, right? Time-bound. How do we know? Well, we want to see 85% of folks recommending it as a place to work to their friends. And the rate of regrettable turnover, we want to see go down. The percentage of people who quit that we didn't voluntarily and that we didn't want to quit. Right? So again, what will people do differently? Who does what by how much tells us that we've delivered a good OKR. And then it's up to us to go figure out, right, how to create a successful feature or solution or service or experience for someone so that their behavior changes for the positive. Every decision we make serves the customer, right? And we're not married to any specific feature, because any feature that we come up with that doesn't serve this behavior change didn't work, and we have to try something else. Let's do some common questions for OKRs, and we'll wrap up and do some Q&A together, okay? So why use OKRs, right? There's a lot of hype about them. Maybe I'm convincing you that it's a good goal-setting framework. Maybe I'm not, but let's talk about three clear reasons why I think. These aren't the only three, but I think these are the top three benefits of objectives and key results. First and foremost, because we are not setting features as the goal, we are explicitly demanding that our teams do discovery work to determine which solutions are most likely to succeed. Right? Discovery work is research, it's design, it's product discovery, it's lean UX, it's design thinking, it's experimentation, it's customer interviewing, it's prototyping. It's all of those types of activities that are low risk and lightweight and help us determine whether or not we're building something of value for our customers. By doing discovery work, we start to build a culture that is closer to the customer, because we are talking to them and interacting with them and doing research with them. And so we're building a much greater sense of empathy with our customers as well. And in doing so, we are increasing the agility of our organization as well. Because once we decide to work on something, if we collect data, evidence through our discovery work that tells us that the thing that we're working on isn't impacting customer behavior in the way that we hoped, we now have evidence to justify changing course. Changing course based on evidence is agile, lowercase a. It is organizational agility. And the better we get at this, the faster that we can learn, the faster that we can collect evidence that says this is not working, the faster we can pivot, right, to something better, to something more accurate. That's organizational agility. And OKRs enable that customer centricity and enable that agility if they're done correctly. Okay. I want to be super clear that at the foundation, right, one of the foundation of doing OKRs well is organizations that know how to do research, or that will learn how to do research and will learn how to do experiments particularly well, and then go out into the field and start to get a sense of what their customers are doing and whether there are unmet needs and whether we can observe folks, right? And talk to them and understand why people are behaving in these very strange ways and what it is that we could possibly do to make them more successful. And the measure of success, again, is, did we positively change their behavior? Here's a great experiment from Amsterdam, from Rotterdam. Everybody rides bicycles in the Netherlands, as you know. The governments of the cities in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, sorry, this is from Rotterdam, need to know where to put up bike racks. Bike racks are steel and concrete. Once you put them in, it's hard to get them out, and it's costly. So the city of Rotterdam has a bicycle rack that is the size of one parking spot, and it's on wheels. They move it around the city, they place it somewhere, and then they wait and see if people use it. How many people use it? Do they use it consistently? And if they hit a certain threshold of usage, they make that bike rack permanent. And if they don't hit the threshold, they move it to somewhere else until they find the proper spot to put it there, right? They're learning through experimentation, and they are only committing to building something permanent once behavior change, they have evidence that the behavior change is going to change for the better, right? Super clear and super interesting. Last couple of things, okay? What makes OKRs challenging? There's a lot of stuff that makes OKRs challenging. We're going to talk about these 4 things very quickly, and then we'll do Q&A. The first is that successful OKRs are set by working both top-down and bottom-up. Lots of organizations just say, here are the OKRs, work towards them. Or they just don't go past the organizational OKRs, revenue, right? And you're like, okay, but I work on the authentication team. How do I impact revenue, right? What we want is we want our leaders to come up with strategic OKRs. And then we want to provide the goals for our teams that we believe are leading indicators for the strategic goals. And ideally, we meet in the middle and we discuss and we negotiate and we adjust. But the idea is that we both come top down with the organizational goals and bottom up with the team goals. And hopefully they line up and they work together. That makes things difficult, but it's the right way to do this. I've said this a bunch of times, but it happens regularly and frequently. If we start to put output, features, solutions, etc., in our key results, our OKRs lose efficacy. Okay, we can ship features forever. We don't know exactly what to build. We're just making a guess anyway, right? If we set our key results to be delivering features, we're right back to fixed time, fixed scope initiatives. Basically, we're doing waterfall. Again, build this thing by this date. Okay, and the measure of success is, well, did you build the thing rather than did you actually make the customers more successful? If we're going to use outcomes as our key results, our teams need an ideation and a decision-making process for deciding what to build and whether it was good or bad or otherwise, or whether they should pivot, kill, or persevere with their ideas. Product discovery is that process, but many organizations don't know how to do product discovery. And for those organizations that do know how to do product discovery, a lot of them don't allow it to happen. Oh, no, you can't talk to customers. No, we can't run experiments. No, I know what to build, right? I'm sure you've all heard this, right? We've got to build the kind of cultures where product discovery is part of the work, research, design, experimentation, and learning, right? Design thinking, lean UX, etc. And then lastly, and this is a big one, and it's one for sort of leaders, we need to change our incentive structures. If we reward production, people are going to produce. If we reward learning and customer centricity, people are going to learn and serve the customers. But we're super used to incentivizing delivery. And if OKRs are going to work at scale, our incentives have to start focusing on these qualities of learning and customer centricity and making decisions based on evidence. And that's a big, big change in most organizations. Look, the concept is easy, right? We're going to manage the outcomes. We're going to change human behavior. But the implementation is difficult. OKRs are hard, and they're supposed to be. It's a goal-setting framework. It's designed to align an entire organization around in a particular direction and push them towards that. Ideally, if done correctly, the way that I've described here today, that direction is better serving the customer and making them more successful. Because if we make them more successful, we end up making ourselves more successful. And so with that, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for having me. We'll do some Q&A. If you don't get your question answered today, that's my email address on the screen right now. I didn't forget the M. It's jeff@gothealth.co. And you're welcome to send me an email and ask me any questions that you'd like over email as well. Ala, do we have questions?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Jeff, for the amazing presentation and entertaining us with the images as well, of course. Okay, let's get going to the questions. I'm going to start from the very beginning. I'm not sure. if you answer this question, but I don't want to miss anything. So if there's anything you would like to add, please edit. Just give me a second. I'm looking for it. It was here. Yes, from Julian. How to transform goals to initiatives. Do you want to say something about this?
I get the question. I understand. So if we've written a well-written objective and key result, and we believe in that, the initiatives come through a series of hypotheses. Okay, hypotheses are a set of assumptions. Assumptions is just a fancy word for guesses, right? So we're back to guessing, but a hypothesis puts together it puts together here. You know what? I have a slide for it that I skipped this because I didn't show it. But can you put my slide back on screen for a second? There it is. Good. So this is my template for writing hypotheses, right? A hypothesis is a way for us to talk about a feature with the doubt that comes with that feature, right? The real world uncertainty and risk that comes with that feature. So we start with the words we believe, right? Not we know, but we believe that this outcome, this key result, this change in human behavior will be achieved if these users, our customers, attain this benefit or outcome for themselves with this feature or solution. And so what we're doing here, we brainstorm a series of ideas, or we have a backlog of ideas, but we now have a new key result as a goal, right? So your key result needs to go in that outcome column. And then we say, okay, great. We want to build a mobile app. Okay, the mobile app is for which user? It's for this customer. Okay, we're working towards that customer's goals. What benefit would they get from a mobile app? Well, they'd be able to shop from wherever they are. Okay, that makes sense. And if we build the best mobile app that we can, what will they be doing differently? Well, we'd like to see at least 50% of our revenue and our orders come from the mobile app. Okay, right. So we believe that 50% of our orders will come from the mobile channel if existing customers can shop from wherever they are with a mobile app. Okay, right. That's the first test, right? So we come up with an idea, and if we can phrase it as a hypothesis, and it's a believable hypothesis. In other words, you've written a short story here. Like imagine a user story, right? This is just like a user story, except your definition of done here is the outcome, right? If you can fill out this template and you can tell a story with this template that you believe, that the team believes, right? That's the first test, right? To say, look, I think that we believe that this is what we should build. It's for these people. And if we do a great job, this is how we'll know. This is how their behavior will change. If you can tell a compelling story that way, that's a good first test. If you can't, there's an indication there that something's broken. It's for the wrong target audience. You're not targeting those behaviors right now. It's not the right feature, etc. But if you can write a believable hypothesis statement, then your next step is to say, okay, great. We've got a believable hypothesis that might help us solve the problem and achieve the key results. We're going to pursue that as an initiative. Right? Now, we don't know if it's right. We don't know if the story, it's a believable story, but we don't know that if it's true. And so we're going to start to build experiments and tests around it that attempt to de-risk the riskiest parts of this hypothesis. And that's that product discovery process. So the step between goals and initiatives is either brainstorming, soliciting ideas, looking at your backlog, and then framing those feature and solution ideas as believable hypotheses that you think will help you achieve your key results, and then doing discovery work. But that's the step in between those two parts.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a great answer. Hope Julian get your answer. And now we've moved forward to Gerald's question. You said set up the objective in a way that you can influence it. In Agile and larger product development, we often have several teams contributing to a single outcome. They all influence, but sometimes the influence is just 20%. What are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts about that is that reality always gets in the way of my really good short answers. Gerald, you're 100% right? That's reality in the enterprise. And that's where I spend a lot of my time, right? What we tend to do in those situations, let's say, so you use 20%, that's perfect, right? Let's say there are 5 teams and each one of them is working on roughly 20% of the initiative. What we're going to do is we're going to set an objective and key result that is for all 5 teams, right? So instead of each team having a specific OKR to work on, we're going to give all 5 of those teams the same OKR. Now, there's a reason for that, right? The reason for that is because, number one of the things that this dissuades is hyper-local optimization. Imagine for a second in Gerald's example, right, that we have 5 teams, each working on 20% of an initiative, and each one has their own OKR. What each team is going to do is they're going to work in a silo with blinders on to hit their objective and key result, especially their key results. And they're not really going to care how that work impacts the team to the right, the next team, and the next team, and the next team, because their goal is their very specific, right, very contextually specific key result. When we give every one of those teams the same goal, we can still work locally, but we have to keep our eyes open to see how we're impacting the entire user journey, the entire experience, right? We're forcing those teams to self-organize. We're forcing those teams to be transparent with each other. We're forcing those teams to say, hey, team 1, when you folks changed that part of the experience over here, it negatively impacted the piece that we're working on. We've got to figure out how to balance that back out, right? Because we win or lose together, right? It's not like, well, team 1 hit their KRs and everybody else failed, and 80% of the project failed, but 20% worked. It doesn't work that way. The way that we avoid this and the way that we deal with this very realistic enterprise world situation is we give all the teams the same goal to work towards.
That makes so much sense. Thank you, Jeff. Let's move on. We got a couple questions lined up, and the other one is from Adrian. How important are pilot projects and voice of customer sessions with target customers in the discovery work and for achieving OKRs?
Super important. That's my answer. I'll dig in a little bit, but I mean, that's it, right? So voice of the customer and pilot projects, initiatives, experiments, proofs of concept, prototypes, listening in the call center, reaching out to customers, if you have a physical store, for example, you have physical presence for your business, going to that place and watching people do what they do, asking them why they do what they do. All of those things are part of doing research, part of the discovery effort, part of the learning effort. And it's crucial. Now, we don't have to do all of that stuff all the time, right? We have to use the tool that gives us the learning that we're looking for in the fastest possible way. The way that we frame this when we teach this stuff, and we have a canvas called the Lean UX Canvas. If you haven't seen it, there's a blog post on my blog called Lean UX Canvas version 2. And the last 2 questions in the canvas are, what's the most important thing we need to learn next? Okay, so what's the riskiest part of the hypothesis right now? Okay, and we have a debate about that. We decide what's the most important thing to learn next. And then the second question is, what's the least amount of work we need to do to learn that? And the answer to that question is your discovery activity. It's your experiment. It's your research. So sometimes it's talking to customers or listening in on customer service conversations. Sometimes it's building a prototype. Sometimes it's building a pilot initiative. Sometimes it's shipping software in an A/B test, right? There's infinite varieties to this, and they're all focused on what do we need to learn right now, and what's the easiest, fastest, cheapest way for us to learn that.
Thank you, Jeff, for your answer. And a canvas that he mentioned, Noran did just post it on the chat if you want to have a look at the canvas. And the other question coming from Christopher, what happens, OKR, when you are in an organization where you have to have software that complies to regulations? The product has to do X for us to be compliant. There is little to no discovery there.
Great question. Yep. And so I work a lot in financial services. and I work a lot in various places where there's compliance and regulation. And I disagree that there's no discovery. I don't disagree that you have to be compliant, right? You have to. Right? There's no debating that. Where the variability is how do you create a customer experience that meets the customer needs while also meeting the regulatory and compliance needs? I'll give you an example. About 8 years ago, I worked with a company in New York City that was in the fantasy sports industry, right? Fantasy sports, like I don't know if it's big in the US. It's coming to Europe. In any case, it's gambling. Bottom line is it's online gambling. And particularly in the US, and I'm sure in Europe as well. I don't do online gambling, so I'm not that familiar with it. But particularly in the US, you have to go through what's known as a KYC process. If you work in financial services, you know this. It's KYC stands for Know Your Customer. In other words, they want to make sure that I am more than 18 years, I'm older than 18, and that I am who I say I am before I can gamble or transact on the site. KYC is non-negotiable. It's a regulation. You have to comply with it. Otherwise, you're out of business. What the regulatory agencies don't dictate is how you comply with it, how you get the answers, right? And so one of the things that we experimented with at this fantasy sports company about 8 years ago was different ways of asking for the KYC information. So, right. So instead of somebody coming to the site and saying, I want to place a bet. And you're like, okay, here's a wall with 27 questions and you got to upload an ID and this, and you have to wait, right? Instead of doing that, we tried to experiment with ways to distribute those questions in the experience in such a way that allowed our users, our customers, to enjoy the service, right, while providing the information in opportunistic ways. We still met with the compliance regulations, but we got people into the product, into the experience sooner, and that got them to stick around and actually use the product more frequently than before. And so the lesson there is that you have to comply, right? You have to do the regulatory stuff, but are there ways for you to do it such that people can get more value from the product or from the service ahead of that, of asking them this mountain of regulatory and compliance stuff? It's a story. I hope it helped. Obviously, without specifics, it's hard to say, but I hope the story helped.
Thank you, Jeff. We have 7 questions. So I think I'm going to pick some of them, and maybe after the session, I can forward you the questions, get answers from you, and then share it within the follow-up email. So I actually want to learn the answers. So I'm going to be biased. What if you do not reach key results? What do you do?
So you shouldn't, right? The idea here is that you shouldn't hit 100% of your key results every single time. If you're hitting 100% of your key results every single time, then your goals were set too low. And we learned that over time. We learned to kind of set, this is too low, this is too high. We should be aiming for about 75 to 80% of our key results every quarter. If you're not hitting 75 or 80%, like you're hitting 10%, 20%, 30%, what are you learning? Right. So if I'm the boss and you come to me and you say, look, Jeff, I know we said we want to increase retention by 50%. We're at 7%, 8%. Okay, what are you learning? We're learning that 50% is impossible. Maybe we can get to 15 or 20%. Okay. Or we're learning that it's really hard to get people to retain when this is part of our business model. Okay. Then we can have an objective, evidence-based conversation about whether or not this is still a realistic goal or we want to go there. The problem arises when a team is consistently failing to get close to their key result and they're not learning anything. Something's broken there. And I think as a leader, as a manager, you need to dig in and understand why they're not reaching their key results and why they're not learning as well. And so that to me is the key. But like 75 to 80% should be the goal.
Thank you, Jeff. for your answer. I think since we are now out of the time, I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to answer all these questions, but I'm going to make sure that I will forward them to Jeff after the session. So we're coming to an end now. Before we finish this session, Nuran just already posted the link and Jeff already put the discount. So here is Jeff's OKR book website, and there is his course. And his course is discounted by 90% until
90.
Monday. 90, yeah. Until Monday. So you gotta be quick if you wanna benefit from the discount. And I will also forward this link to you with the follow-up email tomorrow. I'm going to make sure it's not going to be later than Monday, so you don't miss the discount. Thank you all for joining us today and for the amazing, engaging session. Thank you, Jeff. It was a really great learnings for us too.
Thanks, everybody.
See you
Thanks,
at the event.
Bye.